those that are here tonight. You know, you might still find it in union halls, in church halls, at Dodger Game. No, I mean, okay. I do have a dog. Anyway, I do bring you a very warm welcome from the hundreds of thousands of working men and women from OCCORD, the LA County Federation of Labor. Like many of you, I came from a different place. I was born in the Central Valley, one of 11 kids in a migrant worker family. We worked under the worst of conditions in the 50s and the 60s, and I know some of you might think, boy, that was so long ago. But two things changed my life. First, my parents and the teachings of the Catholic Church. The way that my parents practiced those teachings. You know that as poor as we were, working 6 days a week, my parents always gave time and even food to those who had less than we did. Then there was Cesar Chavez and the courageous farm workers that gave us hope that things could be different. And those lessons came with me when I organized and was elected to lead Local 11 of the hotel workers. Now I try to use them and apply them as a leader of the labor movement more broadly. You know, one of the great and most important joys of my life is seeing working men and women organize and stand up. They become fearless champions for their families, for their union, for their communities, and for their country. Because it's hard, isn't it? It's hard. It's hard enough going to work, raising kids. Sorry about that.
No problem.
And dealing with all the things that life throws at us. I marvel at the hotel housekeepers who, after working a whole day of scrubbing toilets and making beds, they come to a meeting at night with kids on their laps. I was one of those women with a kid on my lap at meetings. I remember that like it was yesterday. It's amazing what you can do when you believe in a cause. And our cause is fighting for a middle class. And a middle class that is barely hanging on, but we're fighting for that middle class. Our cause is fighting for low-wage workers. And by the way, that's one thing that I say this with no pride whatsoever, that LA County beats Orange County. In LA County, we have the largest number of low-wage workers of any metropolitan area in the country. 28% of full-time workers make less than $25,000 a year. Now, you cannot build strong communities on the backs of low-wage workers. And the gulf between the rich and the poor in this country is getting greater and is greater than at any time since the 1920s. And no one epitomizes. Remember this. No one epitomizes this income inequality. No single corporation does more to perpetuate this income inequality than Walmart. Walmart sells blue jeans. Walmart sells CDs. Walmart sells groceries and a million other things. But their chief product is poverty. As the world's largest private sector corporation, what Walmart does matters. With 1.3 million workers just in the U.S. I don't know if those in the back heard me. With 1.3 million employees in the U.S. alone, Walmart's economy is bigger than that of 7 countries. It is a corporate model that much of American business is becoming or aspires aspires to be. Tomorrow night, right about this very time, I will be in jail with 75 of my sisters and brothers. It's part of what we are calling the largest nonviolent Walmart civil disobedience in history. In the most dramatic way possible, we want to shine a light on Walmart's role in perpetuating income inequality. And I invite you to come. I invite you to show your support for those getting arrested. Tomorrow, 5 p.m., in Chinatown, downtown LA, at the intersection of Cesar Chavez and Grant. Anybody want to be here tomorrow? Come on, raise your hand. Anybody going to be there with us tomorrow? Okay. You know, sometimes it seems like this part of marching, I don't know if anybody can hear me in the back. Yeah, okay, I can. Can you hear me? Okay. Sometimes it seems like our marching, knocking on doors, sit-ins and our votes, we take 2 steps forward and we'll take 1 step back. Honestly, you must have that feeling sometimes, don't you? Just recently in remarks I made to a group, I had reason to remember June 15, 1990. On that day, thousands of immigrant janitors marched through the streets of Century City and some of the highest priced commercial real estate in the world. The janitors were marching for the simple American right to have a union. The police met these men and women with billy clubs and brutality. You know, it looked more like Birmingham or Selma in the 1960s. But those janitors won their union, and their victory was part of the beginning of a new era in California and in the country. Immigrant workers were inspired by hotel workers getting arrested in the lobbies of the high-end hotels. They saw the labor movement as a home and as a vehicle to lift themselves out of poverty. But let me put those actions in the larger political context of the times. In 1994, just a few years later, California became the first state to pass legislation related to immigration. The very first state. Before you clap, think about it. This groundbreaking legislation denied undocumented immigrants access to public education, denied access to health care and other social services. That was Prop 187. That was under the leadership of Republican Governor Peoples. I bring that up because it's worth remembering as you push that big rock up that Orange County hill. At some point, that rock will get to the top of the hill, and then it'll start rolling down, and then you've got some serious momentum. We know what happened. In the midst of that horrible political climate of Pete Wilson and Prop 187, immigrants were inspired to join the labor movement. And our labor movement victories extended well beyond the workplaces. As the labor movement reached out to Latino voters to make their voices heard for ballot box 2, these largely working-class voters have transformed the politics of California and increasingly across the entire nation. Back then, the governor was Republican. Today, the governor is Democrat, and so is every single statewide office in California. Back then, one Republican senator, one Democratic senator. Today, 2 Democratic senators. Back then, 50% Republican, 50% Democrat in the United States House of Representatives. Today, 25% Republican and 73% Democrat. Sisters and brothers, we have got to continue our efforts to link the workplace, immigration, and the ballot box. And let me give you one example. engage a worker in a conversation before that worker went into work. That was not easy, but they did it. And it amazed me how in a split second they could talk to an unorganized worker under the eyes of the boss and tell them their immigrant story, especially the part that they were dreamers. And they immediately won credibility. These dreamers have the kind of audacity that our movement needs. You know, we live what a lot of the unions do. We printed up a t-shirt for them. And we said, when you go to these workplaces, wear your official